Hi, this is Steve Lynch from Autograph. You're listening to Fruitcake Tony on Show Me Your Pick on YouTube.
All right, we made it. Yes, we did.
What's up, people?
Welcome.
Focus.
Show Me Your Pick, episode 250. What's up?
Hey, what's going on?
Can't believe it's
250. Unbelievable, right?
250.
Isn't it?
It is. It's May the 10th. Fruitcake Tony, Brendan B. Squared, Ed DeBrill in the house. Autograph tonight. We have a special guest. Steve Lynch is with us in the green room, backstage. Yeah. How you guys doing?
I'm great. I'm on pins and needles here. I'm a fanboying out. But, get it all out now so I can be normal when we talk to Steve. Yeah, no, this is awesome. Can't wait.
Yeah.
It's a long time in the making, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has been. We've so we all love Autograph, and we all know that I really love Autograph.
Yeah.
Yes. So we've been saving the Autograph episode for a minute. And really good timing. Steve has a brand new book out, Confessions of a Rock Guitarist. Yeah,
it's amazing, and
yes,
I'm sure we'll be talking about that. And if you don't have the book, go out and get it. It's a fantastic read. So I couldn't put it down.
Me neither. I was falling asleep in bed reading it. Just, one more chapter. This is awesome.
A really great book about Steve and his life and times and Autograph and how all that happened, and the 1984 and all the tours that in their career. It was a great read and a great ride also. Kind of one of those where you a little sad that you're at the end, you know.
I know, it kind of takes you back to where you were at some of those times.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, yes.
I know, man. I was 18 years old in 1984.
Music is
it was a very good year.
I was 17. I was 17.
I was a sophomore in high school.
Well, I turned 18. Yeah, that's right. I was a junior.
15. I was 15.
So you're a year younger than me, and I think Tony's a little bit older than me. But
once I'm the baby.
A year maybe.
It never happens. Anyway.
So tonight we normally do a big round of 10-shot rock and roll trivia and have some fun later on. We are not doing it. I did not have to write any questions this week, so I'm pretty stoked about that already. But no trivia for tonight. That will return next Saturday. you trivia players here. Everyone in the chat, welcome. Thanks for being here. If you're new, subscribe here. We talk guitar picks and rock memorabilia every Saturday night here. Show me your pick. Me and these fellas and a whole lot of cool people over in the live chat there where you are. If you've stumbled in here, and we are live. I know a lot of people might watch this on replay also. Thank you for tuning in. We show guitar picks. We'll be showing autograph Steve Lynch, really vintage autograph guitar picks tonight at some point in the show. You'll be in a treat for that. We will talk all about this new wonderful book. Go get this book, Steve Lynch. We all know Steve Lynch and love Steve Lynch. Confessions of a Rock Guitarist.
Look at that license plate. Awesome.
I love that license plate.
Yeah.
I know.
Wow.
I like that car too. I want that Mercedes.
Yeah. And the guitar.
We'll ask him if he has both. So.
Yeah. Yes. You
Where is
get
he,
that book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and a slew of others. And yeah,
man.
So why don't we, without further ado, and we are not going to do a big roll call for those of you in the chat. So thanks for being here. Okay.
Thank you.
We know you're here, and we love you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
Without further ado, let's bring in the man himself, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Lynch. Yeah. There he is.
Hey guys, how you doing? Good to be here.
Oh man,
Steve, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Excellent. Thank you for being here, man.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
This is such a treat, and thank you for such a great book.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad I sent you that PDF of the book so that you can you can get a chance to read it. And I'm doing this with the interviewers, and I especially wanted you to read it, and then that way you would have, an idea of what the book is about and everything. So it's Confessions of a Rock Guitarist, and as you were mentioning, it's available on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com or bookshop.com. Okay, so, and if you just type in my name or the title of the book, Confessions of a Rock Guitarist, it'll get you right there. So I just want to get that out of the way so people know where to get it.
We'll have those links posted to Steve here in the show and in the chat. So go out and get this book. This book, Steve, was kind of a little surprise, knowing your earlier writings, but this book really covers your life and everything, and it was fantastic, and I learned a lot about you, sir.
Well, it was I decided to tell like the whole life story, because otherwise you don't really get an idea of how I got into playing guitar and all that, which was at a very young age, of course, and all the trials and tribulations that I went through to get to the point, of autograph, and then, the things that I'd done after that, which was quite a bit. And so it really tells the story chronologically. I wanted to do it right from the beginning on up to right now, where my life is right now. And so I think I succeeded in doing that. It took a long time to do it. What I did was everybody was always telling me, whenever I was sharing my stories with them, they always said, you got to write a book about this. I mean, you've got so many stories, and all the different things you've been through. You've got to write a book about this. And so what I started doing about maybe 10 years ago, I started writing down single sentence reminders of all these different stories. Because as soon as I read the sentence, then I'd go, oh yeah, that's that story. You know what I mean? So it brought back all the memory of that. And so I had about 200 of them written down, and I wasn't sure when I was really going to start it. But then COVID happened, so basically I was stuck at home, and I didn't have, I couldn't go out and play, I couldn't teach, I couldn't really do anything, and so I thought, okay, this is the time to sit down and start writing the book. So I started writing it in March of 2020, and it took me 2 years to complete, and then things kept getting postponed up until it being released, as of the 20th of this month. But the thing is things got postponed because everything was so backed up with the whole COVID thing and everything, with the publishing company and all that. So it took a while, and then, but it happened. I'm glad that happened because of the fact that there's so many different things that happen, since that time, since I finished the book, which was March of 2022. And that's also when I signed the deal with Indigo River Publishing. But there's like the whole Hall of Fame thing. There's, I got engaged at the Hall of Fame, and then.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, there's just a lot of other things that I added into the book, and unfortunately, right when I signed that deal, that's when Randy passed too. That was April of 2022. April 26th of 2022, and it's just really sad because Randy and I roomed together the whole time that we were touring, and so we were just like these. We were like best friends the whole time. It was great. We never had any problems whatsoever. We just loved partying together. The whole band was like that. Autograph never had any issues. It was just a fun party band. When it was time to work, it was time to work, and when it was time to play, it was time to play. And we did both very well. Put it that way. And so
nice.
Yeah. And as you'll read in the book, but it reminds me of the lyric. The lyrics in Turn Up the Radio where it goes, I'm working hard, you're working too. We do it every day. For every minute I have to work, I need a minute to play. You know what I mean? So it falls right into that category right there.
Right.
So,
that's it.
Nice. You and Randy always played well with each other.
Yeah.
There was always that vibe, and we could tell it as fans.
Yeah. When you saw us play live, Randy had always come over to my side of the stage because I had my pedal board over on my side, so I pretty much had to stay in that area so I could get to changing different sounds and everything. And so he would come over there because Randy didn't have any pedal board; he just plugged straight in, and so he didn't have to remain stationary. And then we would just goof around and we would make people laugh. And whenever we were together on stage, I was actually talking to Regina, his widow, a little while ago about this and how. Everybody's cameras would come up and it was always that way, and everybody wanted to, see Randy and I together. And so just got tons of pictures of that. And I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve, there's your new book, and we'll show this image of the cover again right there.
Mm-hmm.
This book, there was early in the book, there was a very unique story that is heartwarming to us around here at Show Me Your Pick, is the essence of why we come here as collectors of memorabilia from our heroes. You are a young rock fan waiting outside a cold, rainy venue for Jeff Beck to get guitar pick. You want to elaborate on that?
I think it was 1971. You can go ahead and. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, but the how you waited, and it's the last limo, and he invites you in the limo and gives you a guitar pick.
Yeah, he saw that I was standing out in the rain, and he knew that I was gonna probably come up and ask him for something, which I did. I was shaking. I was so nervous. Plus, I was so damn cold. It was in Seattle, just outside the Paramount Theater up there. It was 1970, 71. And anyway, I got up the courage to go up and ask him, and he had been having equipment problems all night, so he was in an argument with his with his tour manager right before he walked out to his limo. And I ran up and I just said, "Hey, Jeff," I was shivering. And I said, "Can I please have a guitar pick? I know this isn't the appropriate time, but he just looked at me and I thought he was going to kill me. And then he says, "Get in the limo, mate." And so I got in, and he was fumbling around through his Pan Am flight bag, and he pulls out a Herco Heavy and he gives that to me. And I was just like, I was in heaven, it's just like, oh my God, I just got a pick from Jeff Beck, my idol, and I was just this kid. I hadn't been playing for very long, and so I took that pick and I played with it till I wore it down to a nub, till it was just unusable anymore. And so then I stuck it in my hip pocket and I carried it around for just years and years and years. It's kind of like a good luck charm because I never wanted to give that away. And then fast forward 15 years to 1985, and I was at the NAMM show, and backstage at the NAMM show from the Performance Center there, I saw Jeff Beck, and there was Roger Fisher there, the guitarist from Heart, and he had just designed this guitar, and he wanted to hand it to Jeff. It had all these LED lights on it and everything. Pretty cool looking guitar. And so, but Jeff couldn't play it because he had a broken thumb. So he looked at me and he handed it over to me, and he didn't know who I was or anything, so then I started doing this two-handed stuff, and I went blah 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 blah. He said, "Oh my God, what is that?" And so I started showing him. I was giving Jeff Beck a guitar lesson. My God, that was just like so out of this world.
Wow.
And so beyond my wildest dreams, of course. And so, he said, "That's really cool," and I said, "Jeff, I've got a story to tell you, and I said, when you were playing with Beck, Bogart, and Appleseed back in, I believe it was 1970, and it was pouring down rain outside the Paramount Theater, and you took me inside the limo and you gave me a Herco Heavy guitar pick." And he goes, "My God, you were that kid that was standing out in the rain, freezing your butt off. And I told you to get in the limo because I could see you were really cold." And I said, "Yeah, you gave me that guitar pick and I used it till it was worn down to nothing." He thought that was what a great story. And then I reached into my hip pocket and I pulled it out, what was left of it. And I gave it to him and I said, "I want you to have this." And he was just like, "Wow, you still have that?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been waiting for this moment, and here it is." And there wasn't a dry eye in the house right then,
Amazing.
That's got to be one of the greatest stories of all time, right there.
Awesome.
It was just one of those things where, my God, this really happened, and so just like through all the stories throughout my book, it's just one of those things. It's a lot of it's timing, being at the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on what story you're reading, of course. So yeah, that's one of my favorites right there.
That's a great.
Obviously mine, Ed, as you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of Jukebox Hero when you say you were standing in the rain, your head hung low, so forth. You and I have a little bit of history, a little bit of in my life anyway. We've never met, but I always tell people my first concert was Van Halen, 1984.
Right, yeah.
But the first band I ever saw perform live was Autograph, 1984. Yeah. And you were the first band I've ever seen.
Which city was it in?
It was in Providence, Rhode Island.
Oh my God! Yeah.
My friends and I, I live in the Northeast. I live in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
We tried to get tickets to Worcester, but they were sold out. So it was me and 5 lovely ladies. I was 17, and one of the fathers of one of the girls drove us down in his station wagon. And
station wagon.
Station wagon, Plymouth station wagon. Yeah, with the wood panels and everything. That's just great. Like vacation. But anyway, so we went down there and we got to see you guys and Van Halen at the Providence Civic Center on March 18th, '84.
Yeah.
So you were the first band I ever saw live.
You know, that's funny because my fiance back in 1980, my fiance now, back in 1984 is when I was the first band that she saw live too. Well, she didn't really see us. She only came in like right as soon as we got done playing, but she came there to see Van Halen. And then 36 years later, these people, she's off to dinner with these people, and they were talking about was the first band you ever saw. And she said, "Oh, it was Van Halen." In fact, I met the guitar player from the opening band, this guy named Steve. Well, there were 3 Steves in Autograph. And so, so they're looking around, you know, on Instagram and everything, and they found me. And they go, "Oh my God, that's him!" And so she contacted me. She sent me a message and said, "Hey, you know, how are you doing? This is Suzanne from, you know." I remembered her because we really hit it off. But the thing is that she was going up to school. She was from New Jersey, but she was going to school up in Providence, Rhode Island. Okay. So that's why it kind of clicked. The whole thing clicked when you said that. And then,
fantastic.
And I was living in LA, you know, and I was touring all the time. So we never got a chance to really keep in contact, you know, because we were opposite ends of the world basically. And then, but she contacted me with that message just saying hi. And then I'm down in Tampa, Clearwater area of Florida. And she was coming down here because she was doing the insurance for the Philadelphia Phillies, and so that was her job, doing the insurance for them over here. And so she had to come down for spring training, and which was like the next week. So I said, "Yeah, it'd be great to see you again." You know, we got together for dinner, and you know what? We hit it off just like it clicked way back in 1984. So it was amazing. 36 years later at this time. Now it's been 40, going on 41 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just an amazing story. You know, it's just it was meant to be. You know,
I was just going to say that it was meant to be, man.
Yeah.
And I think I saw you again during the Theater Pain tour, maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember that tour.
Although Tommy Lee didn't, I don't remember much of it either. Although I think Tommy Lee didn't puke on me though, so thank God for that.
Oh, do you see? And that happened after Tommy Lee and I were up all night doing, you know, the nose candy and everything. That's what it was. If you didn't do it back then, they thought you were weird. Put it that way. Oh, you know, it was so
you
popular.
were square.
Yeah, right. So and we were drinking Jack and everything, and then, oh my God, we don't even remember, you know, the night before. It was just like, all we know is we woke up at the back of the tour bus. I was on his tour bus, and we were just like, oh my God, we were in serious pain. Theater of Pain. Yes. Perfect name for it.
Perfect.
Yeah. So,
wow.
So, yeah, and the first thing he says, "Lynch, I don't know how I'm going to play tonight." And I said, "I don't know how I'm going to play either, Tom." So when Autograph played, I mean, I was so hungover that I ran behind the amps and I puked twice. And then I kept playing too. And so,
wow.
Yeah, you know, it's you got to be a professional, right?
Yeah,
so anyway, so then when I got off stage, I was walking down backstage area and I saw Tommy sitting on the floor with his drumsticks, and he goes, "I don't know if I can do this yet."
Yeah, because he had that cage that came out,
right, exactly. And so he gets up there.
I would have puked too.
Drum solo.
Oh man!
And then he starts throwing up on the audience. The audience thought it was part of the show, and so they're going, "Oh, cool! Oh, shit!" You know? He's throwing up on us, you know.
Wow. That's so funny. That's awesome.
So Ed, you told us that both you and Steve survived the same hurricane.
Yeah. I back in '92. My ex and I and our family, we went down to Florida. Her mom lived down at Deerfield Beach. Yep. And we went down there for like 2 weeks for a vacation, and we were going to Disney, and we had all these plans. Well, the first 3 days, I think, we're battening down the hatches and putting these things up over the windows, and then we got evacuated because we were too close to the ocean, and we had to go to Margate, and her father's house was there.
Uh-huh.
That they only went down certain times of the year. So we all there was like 12 people staying in this house in Margate, and we had to ride out Hurricane Andrew. And the house was shaking, and the winds were howling, I was scared shitless.
Oh my
and
God, yeah.
Finally, in the morning, it all subsided. It opened up the door. It was so hot in there and humid, you couldn't.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh my God. But I read that you went down there and then you went up to Daytona Beach.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's correct. I went way up there.
Good for you.
we were in the red zone too, but then the hurricane if you remember, it went south. So it actually went south of Miami down to the Cutler Ridge and Homestead area.
Yep.
And so it completely wiped it out down there. But I was also in a mandatory evacuation. I was in the red zone because of the fact that I was on, US 1, which is commercial or federal highway.
Yep.
And so I was only like 8 blocks from the beach too, and so it was mandatory evacuation. So that's when I drove up there. But it was August 24th, I believe. I'd only been down there 6 months. I'd only been down there. I left LA on the day of the Rodney King riots, the verdict of that, and that's just like.
Thank God you left.
I have to
no kidding.
Like think about this, the timing of that. It's just like we leave there just in time to go into another disaster. It's just like
one to the other.
Following me.
Oh my God.
Timing.
Yeah, exactly. But
I mean,
I survived it, and it was just another one of those things. And when we came back down, there was everything was total mess. There wasn't electricity for 4 days, but it didn't. The Cutler Ridge Homestead area, Cutler Ridge, something like that. In the Homestead area, I drove through a couple of months later, and there was it looked like, an atomic bomb had gone off. It was very, very devastating to see that. Devastated, yeah.
That's so sobering. I mean, you were headed to the Keys, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
doing.
We were driving down to Key West, and so. Yeah.
We wanted to as part of our vacation, but we said, no, we're not even going to try.
Yeah.
I didn't know, we did end up going to Orlando and going to Disney, which worked out fine.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, there was too much devastation around.
Yeah.
So I always thought that you should have changed your book name to The 9 Lives of a Rock Guitarist.
Right.
Or The Misadventures of a Rock Guitarist. Holy moly.
That's the next.
Well, the reasons I call it Confessions because there's things in there that I'd never shared with anyone.
Right.
And so and I just decided, I'm just going to come clean and I'm just going to tell everything. So there's a lot of things in there that my family never knew about. Close friends. Oh yeah. So they're going to be reading this and they're going to disown me after this.
The holidays are going to be fun this year. So
yeah, right.
But going through and getting the rain, and at least you didn't get thrown up on by Tommy, but you did get a saliva shower from Bryan Adams. So
that's right.
That
we were on
that had to be great.
Oh,
and we were on stage, and it was last night that we were playing with him, and he got up on stage and sang with us on Turn Up the Radio, and we thought that was really cool. He loved the song, so he said, "Can I come up and sing?" We said, "Of course, yeah."
Of course.
And so then when we got up when he was ending his set, and it was cuts like a knife, that song.
Yeah.
And so we were standing on the side of the stage waving because we were getting ready to get on the tour bus, and so he said, no. He said, come up. And they put up an extra mic for us. And, or actually a couple of mics because they had all of us come up. And so we were singing the chorus to Cuts Like a Knife. And then he came over and he was facing us and he was singing. Now, if you've ever seen Bryan Adams, it's a spit fest.
You can
everywhere.
See it, yeah.
So we were like getting covered with his spit, and it's like we were going like this, and he was just laughing. He thought it was funny. you know, and then
oh man,
and then at the end of the song, you know, everybody went just crazy, you know, because we're all up there together, and he says, now that Autograph is freshly showered, you know, and everybody just you know, we're all laughing. It's just one of those moments.
Spit.
And then that night, I think it was that night or a few nights later, but then we ended up, just a whirlwind of a tour. We got done. I know what it was. We went and filmed the Dick Clark show, American Bandstand, and then we had to fly in for that, and then we had to fly out the same day because we were playing that night.
Right.
Wow.
And so then that was in Detroit and with Aerosmith actually, and so we got to Detroit and played that night, and then we of course Detroit has this huge Greek town, great Greek food, and so we went to that afterwards, and then Bob Seger was there with Aldo Nova and a bunch of other people. It was his birthday, so they were celebrating in the VIP room upstairs where they let us up to, and so we partied with him all night, doing those shots of Ouzo and everything, and then we had to get on the tour bus, and then you know, it's like we had to drive to Cleveland, and so we drive to Cleveland. We're all hungover as hell. I mean, you know, it was horrific. And then I remember Steve Plunkett. We got up on the stage, and we weren't even sure where we were at. You know, one of those cities that starts with a C in Ohio. It's Cleveland, Columbus, or Cincinnati. So Steve Plunkett walks up to the microphone. He goes, "Hey, Cincinnati, how you doing?" And we just got pelted with shit, you know, because you know we're in Cleveland, you know, oh my God.
Oh man.
But what a funny story it turns out to be later on, you know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I mean, and you know, in the book it says that Dick Clark was like dropping the F-bomb and saying,
"Oh yeah,
guys aren't ready."
Because
the kids.
Because these little dancing group, the kids that were on before us,
yeah.
You know, they film 6 episodes on every Sunday. You know what I mean? That's what they do. They film them all ahead of time, and then they have different shows. Him and his wife ran the whole thing. I was so amazed by Dick Clark and his wife. I think her name was Dana, but they're super sweet people. But they were coming up into our dressing room because it was running overtime. They knew that we had to catch the flight. We had a flight at 2:30 to get up to Detroit from LA, you know, and because we had to play that night. And so Dick Clark came into the room, you know, he knew that we had to go on right away. And so he said, "If those little fucking bastards don't get their shit together on this one, I'm going to boot them off the show." And then he just slams the door. He walks out of the dressing room and slams the door. And we all looked at each other and we went, "Dick Clark just said the F word." And we were just like, we all just busted up laughing because how big is that? You'd never get to see that when you're watching American Bandstand when you're growing up. No. But there's Dick Clark saying the F-bomb, and he's pissed. He's red in the face, you know. And that was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So.
And you know, you talk about like filming all that episodes. I know it takes a lot, and making you know videos. I do a little bit of acting on the side, so
great.
I know a lot of a lot of songs have been in movies, you know, which is kind of cool. Like one of my favorite sports movies is Youngblood, and
with Rob Lowe,
so Winning is Everything is the song.
Winning isn't everything.
Winning
is everything. That's
winning
what it
is.
was.
And you know, like some movies like Fright Night, Secret Admirer,
You Can't Hide from the Beast Inside. And all that, so,
but
awesome.
You know, what was that experience like when you're filming a video? Because I know you're probably filming and hearing the song about 800 times when you're, you know, all the different angles and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is that the same?
The sound, the angles, they have to get everything, all the timing correct and everything. So, yeah, it can be very hectic. You know, they're like the first video that we did for Turn Up the Radio, that took 2 16-hour days, you know, back to back, you know, and that was tough. Like, this part of the business I don't really care for.
No,
but you know, the exposure that you get, of course, through MTV and then later on VH1 at that time. So
Yeah, and then when you hear if you're in the movies watching a movie and you hear your song, that's got to be some kind of cool.
Oh
too.
yeah,
You're like,
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah, you hear it and you just go, oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. You know, I always get excited whenever I hear my song on the radio, our song on the radio. Then I always go, you know what, that's really cool. Or anything in a movie, you know, and so it's just go, man, that's really awesome. You know, it never gets old, put it that way. It never really does, you know. So
it still holds up to this day. I mean, us in the, you know, Tony and Ed and I, we always talk about, you know, Turn Up the Radio being like one of the greatest rock anthems. You just hear it, everybody knows it
everywhere.
You hear that chug.
It's just that groove, you know, where it starts on that groove and it kind of pulls you in.
It makes you feel good. It just makes you
feel good. It really does. It's a feel good song. And that's the thing. That's what, you know, I loved about the 80s too, is that most of it was just, a lot of it was just kind of humorous. You know what I mean? I mean, it was all about limos and groupies and everything, but it was humorous at the same time. I mean, the way people were dressing and all that, it was all about fun. The 80s was all about fun, which I really loved. And that's why people still really hang on to that era. But then the grunge thing came along, and that kind of shifted it to depression and heroin or addiction and like suicide and everything. And
it did for a lot of us, Steve. No, I did not like that at all.
Yeah.
And we've spoken about that a lot of times.
This came from my hometown of Seattle. You know, I spent you know, most of my life up there. I've spent 41 years living in Seattle. So you know, when it happened, I was living down in LA, and it was like basically towards the end of the 80s. It started to come on in 88 and into 89, and then it just kind of really hit hard in the 1990s. And so I'm just thinking to myself, wait a minute, this is just the way Seattle bands sound. They're not doing anything different except for they're just like a garage band. And this is the way they dress. They wear the flannels. They wear the long johns and everything because of the weather up there. It's always damp and everything. And so, and then they wear the Doc Martens. And so it wasn't a fashion statement. That's just the way everybody dresses up there because of the weather.
It caught on pretty quick, though.
Oh my God!
Exactly. It became this whole thing, and then I hear this music, and I'm going, yeah, this is Seattle bands. This is just the way they sound, you know. And then you know, I'm seeing everybody in LA starting to dress with the Doc Martens, the ripped up jeans and the plaid shirts and everything. And then I'm seeing runway models, you know what I mean, dressed in cut up shorts with these plaid shirts and Doc Martens on them. I'm going, oh my God, this is not a fashion statement. This is just the way Seattle people dress, you know, and they were totally eating it up, you know. It's so funny to live in LA, you know, and watch all these different fashions just come and go. I remember everybody was wearing cowboy hats down there for a while. I'm going, this is LA. You've never been on a horse. Come on. You don't
Urban
even
cowboy.
know how to put on a bridle, let alone a saddle. You know, come on. Let's get real, people. So
yeah. Steve, let's go back to the very beginning. So you and the classic autograph lineup, you guys were just jam mates. You guys were all doing stuff on different labels and you know, individually, but you still got together on the weekends because you knew each other. And
exactly.
You you had a couple originals. Obviously you played well with each other and knew each other, but somebody brought in Andy Johns to maybe capture it on a little demo.
Yeah, he had what we did was we went into Victory Studios in North Hollywood. It was just a rehearsal place, and we all knew each other, so it was we just went in on weekends just for the fun of it, you know. It was just really not a big deal because we all had, you know, gigs that were paying us and we were signed and everything. Me and the keyboard player, Steve Isham, were with Holly. We're playing with Holly Penfield on Dreamland Records, and then it was Steve Plunkett was playing with a group called Silver Condor on Columbia Records. Kenny Richards was playing with a group called The Coup on A&M Records, and then Randy Rand was playing bass with Lita Ford. And so we all played in different incarnations of different bands before, and so we just got together and jammed. We had always played well together, no matter what member of whatever concoction it was. We always played well together, and we really enjoyed it as well. And so we, while we were having these jams, we wrote some songs, and we invited the singer Steve Plunkett invited Andy Johns to come down to hear some of our original stuff, and we played it, and he absolutely loved it. And he said, "Hey guys, I got free time down at Gower Studios in Hollywood. Do you want to come down and just bang out, these songs?" And we said, "Yeah, it'd be great, And so we did. We went down there and we banged out 5 songs, one of which was "Turn Up the Tape Machine." It wasn't radio; it was Tape Machine.
Oh,
and,
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
no kidding.
Yeah. Then we changed it to radio later because we thought, well, tape machines might not be around forever. Okay, wise choice. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, things would be completely different in the autograph history. But so we did that, and then Kenny, the drummer, was jogging partners with David Lee Roth. They would meet up at David Lee Roth's place off Sunset Strip every morning at 8:30 and go jogging up and down Sunset Strip. And then, at the end of their jog one day, David asked him what he was doing, and Kenny says, "Oh man, I'm playing with this new band. We're not really a band. We've got just guys that get together and jam, but we just did a demo tape." And when David Lee Roth heard it, he went, "Who's that singer?" And he said, "Steve Plunkett," and then Kenny said, "It's also Randy Rand playing bass," because Kenny knew that Van Halen used to open up for Steve Plunkett and Randy Rand when they had a group called Wolfgang.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Weird.
And so David Lee Roth was like ecstatic, and then Kenny mentioned my name, and David Lee Roth had heard my name around LA because I was doing all the studio stuff and playing in other bands and stuff. And so David said, "Well, hey, why don't you come out and open us up for us on the Van Halen tour, 1984 tour, And so yeah, and so, but we all had gigs, so what we had to do was, we were all done recording with all those little projects, so we had some free time. And we thought, what we'll do is we'll write some more songs together, and then we'll just go and do a few months with them. It'll be fun. And we came up with the name on the way to the first show. We were driving from Los Angeles to Jacksonville, Florida. So straight across Interstate 10, all the way across the United States. And then, we came up with the name on this little beat up, broken down Winnebago, and that, had no brakes and no shocks, and so that's what we drove all the way there. We made it, but that's where we came up with the name, and we called it Autograph, because we had a signature sound and all that. And the fans loved us, and it was really surprising. We didn't expect that. The fans actually really loved us, and we started getting offers from all these record labels, and we're thinking, well, what are we going to do? We're with these other labels and everything. We've got these paid gigs at home, and so we, all these, like I said, all these labels like, Geffen, Warner Brothers, and A&M, and Epic, and everything. They were all offering us these deals. We're saying, well, okay, but we can't really do it. But backstage at Madison Square Gardens backstage, this is just an amazing story. RCA offered us a deal we couldn't refuse, and we took it, and we signed a record deal backstage at Madison Square Gardens with RCA.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, like I said, it's just like stuff like this just doesn't happen to regular people. That's why all these stories, throughout the whole book, just go, wait a minute, this it's one thing after the next. They're not all good, but what you realize, it wasn't fun when it was happening, but when you look back on it, you go, that was actually really funny. When you look back on it in hindsight, then it's a whole different thing.
Good timing.
Yeah, right.
All in all. There was a lovely story in the book, Steve, about when and you obviously a big Hendrix fan and influenced by him.
Absolutely.
You were a bass player originally, and you switched to guitar the day after Jimmy passed, correct? Yeah,
that's right. Well, I started playing bass in 1968 because there was there was already a guitar player who lived down the block, and we wanted to play in a band together. So he said, "Why don't you play bass?" And so I learned how to play bass. I picked it up fairly quickly, but then I really wanted to play guitar. I just loved all the guitar players, especially in 1967. When Hendrix came out with the album "Are You Experienced," and I heard, Purple Haze on that, and I said, "That's what I want to do," But so we did that for a couple of years. But then Jimi Hendrix passed away in September 18th, 1970, and the next day, I went and traded that bass in. My dad took me up and traded the bass in, and I got myself a Stratocaster, and that was it. I've been doing that ever since. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was leading up there, you went to a tribute memorial for Jimmy.
Oh yeah.
And you met this kind little happy man.
Yeah.
And lo and behold.
Yeah, Al. And so we got to talk, and I didn't know who he was. It was just this short little black guy, and just really nice, really friendly. So we started talking. He started telling me all these stories about Jimmy, and about 20 minutes after listening to him, I said, "Well, how do you know all this about him?" And he said, "Well, I'm his dad. I'm Al." And
whoa!
And I just my eyes just teared up immediately. This was in 1973, so it was just a few years after Jimmy died. Wow, yeah. And his eyes started tearing up, and we just gave each other a huge hug, and I just said, "My God, what an incredible pleasure to meet you. This is just, and under these circumstances, unfortunately, but man, I just can't believe I'm talking to Jimmy's dad right now. I mean, that's just like, wow, you can't make that stuff up. That's pretty heavy.
No, very. Very, very.
He told me this one story about Jimmy that is actually become kind of a popular story, and that's that he said that he got his son. He couldn't afford to get him a guitar, but they had one of those little 45 record players, the little small ones where you lift it up and you put the needle on, and and Jimmy would listen to his 45s back then. And so Jimmy would practice with those 45s, strumming with a bread wrapper pick onto a broom, onto the straws of the broom, and he would be there every night until he fell asleep. And his dad, Al would say, there was a little pile of straw from the broom around where he was sitting, and that's how much he was into it. He just wanted to play guitar so bad. And so when he bought him his first guitar, that was just like, that was it for him, so.
That is amazing.
That's a really cool story. You hear these things, from the source itself, and you just go, my God, it takes your breath away. And, at the time I'm thinking, this is his dad, so he's not making this stuff up.
No.
This is like, I think he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, you don't have to fact check it. He knows.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Speaking of dads, Steve, I heard that your dad would stay up late and probably have a few beers and play your guitar a little late at night, and maybe your mom would sing with him and so forth. I too had a father who he unfortunately he was into the trumpet, and he would listen to Glenn Miller and all these
I love that
all the swing band stuff.
Band.
But he would get drunk, and it'd be a school night, and 3 a.m. my dad's playing trumpet, and everybody's awake. And
my dad would sing along with like Charlie Pride and Hank Williams, and his favorite, of course, was Johnny Cash. You listen to Johnny Cash. So,
obviously.
And so that was the country music that I grew up on. That's, to me, is real country music. You know what I mean? And I loved it. And so my dad, this was when I had just this like little acoustic guitar that he bought when I was 9. After I saw the Beatles, I had to have a guitar, so he bought me that.
Of course,
Sears and Roebuck cardboard guitar.
Awesome.
The strings are so high off the neck, I couldn't even press down like one of the strings to get a sound. I was only 9, but
that's a lot of action.
So he would grab that guitar, and he was able to make sound come out of it, but he would strum it and play these, C, G, and D chords and everything, and F chord, and he would play quite a few country songs with that, with those 4 chords, and so
wow.
He was singing, he would play these songs, and then my mom would come in and start singing along with him, and then my dad would have a couple more beers, and he'd start sounding a bit out of pitch. He wasn't strumming quite correctly or anything. So, and so my mom would just give up on him and say, I'm going to the kitchen, So, but it was funny watching that, My dad really, what he wanted to be was Johnny Cash when he was young. I think everybody at that age wanted to be Johnny Cash. But, he learned, some chords, and he was pretty decent at it, but he knew that, having 6 kids, that's not a likelihood that that's going to happen,
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Steve, let me ask you, you lose this?
Oh.
Look familiar?
Yeah. That's an autograph pick. That's from a long time ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tony has them all, Steve.
What's that?
Tony has them all.
Oh man,
You got a
lost
couple.
it,
yeah, those are from the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I remember those. Oh my God, yeah. I don't even have one of those. What the hell, man?
Let me show you this one.
How cool was that? That's awesome.
Awesome. Randy ran. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But he had the wide picks.
Yeah.
I think Tony could probably send you one.
Yeah, I think he could. Do a
So-
good trade.
so-
I think we have
Steve,
that worked out.
I do
Yeah.
have multiples of those older ones, and I'm happy to send you one if you do not have one.
I do not. Let's do a trade.
I will absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to have one of those.
I will. Absolutely.
You know what happened was I just ended up giving away, most all of my memorabilia. I mean, people would want it, and I go, well, I only have a couple 8x10s left of the band, or when I was doing clinics or whatever. And I would just send it to them, I thought, wow. And so I just didn't save a lot of that. Now, Randy saved it all, and so he's,
Look what he has.
His widow now has all this whole, a room full of that stuff.
Look at this.
There you go.
Oh yeah. Hold on here. Let me see this.
Wait, is that your signature?
Yeah.
I hope it is.
Yeah, man.
Let me show you this.
Tony's
I
got
love
everything,
this album
dude.
cover too. I love this album cover.
Steve might, Tony might be an autograph fan.
A
I
little
think
bit.
so.
A little bit.
Absolutely.
You and Randy signed this only.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I'm glad we got a chance to send that. Well, to sign that for you. But yeah, that's a rarity to have that one. I don't have that. So
There you go again.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much.
you're very
Yes.
welcome. Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. So me and the fellas for a couple of days have been laughing about this particular biker bar story in the book.
I've been laughing about a lot of stories.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, anybody gonna? Can you play some Johnny Be Good?
Yeah, right. That was the weirdest thing. Was that
That's strange.
we were playing this biker bar, and it was just absolutely packed, and it was standing room only, and so we were playing, and it was a group called Silverload at the time. That was the last band that I played in Seattle, because I played in all these different bands in Seattle before I even moved down to LA to go to the Guitar Institute in 1978. And so I'd already been playing professionally since 1973. And so this was probably 1975 or 76, and we played at this biker bar, and this one guy just kept coming up and saying, every time we'd end a song, he'd come up and say, "Play Johnny Be Good," and he was just yelling at us, and we go, "Well, it's not in our set. We don't know it," and so we just never learned it,
Right.
And so he kept on coming up in between the songs, and he was getting really kind of pesky, and so then towards the end of the night, he was so obliterated, drunk, and he just comes up and he comes right up to me. He says, "Play Johnny Be Good, God damn it!" And so he pulls out a gun and cocks it and sticks it in my face,
God.
And I went da 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 da.
Oh
and
man!
The rest of the band came in. We played it perfectly, straight on through.
Oh my God!
Nice.
We
Hey,
never
almost
played it
have to
together
at gunpoint.
Yeah.
You never played it
It
again
somehow
after that, right?
inspires you. That's good inspiration, right there.
Steve, you've had so many issues with loggers, bikers, a demon witch,
demon witch. Oh my God!
and a mob lady. Holy moly, dude! I every time I read a chapter, I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
No.
This is
And see,
incredible.
that's the thing. That's why people kept saying you got to write a book about this stuff because
Exactly.
And it really happened because I had witnesses there. And a lot of these people that were telling me that you have to write a book about it actually had witnessed this stuff happen. So,
Wow.
There it is again. Steve Lynch, Confessions of a Rock Guitarist, brand new, just days ago.
Yeah, it'll come
Amazon,
out
Barnes
May
and Noble.
20th. Yeah, it'll come out May 20th.
May
But you
20th.
can pre-order it now. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or Bookshop. So
Are you
Let
doing,
me
are you
ask
doing any
you-
you doing any book signings as well? To go
yeah,
along
I
with
am
that?
actually.
Oh,
There's
really?
one that I have set up right now is called Rock the Block, and it's in Wilmington, Ohio. Great party, man. We go there every year. I think this is like the 4th year we're going. And anyway, it's just friends of mine that are participating in it and everything. How I got to know them was, Autograph played there, and then it became, we all became friends. And so, we keep going back each year, and it's just a blast. And so we're going to be doing a book signing there. And then possibly later on, I'm thinking about doing a book signing at the Guitar Institute, because that would be a great place. And then up in Seattle, since that's my hometown, so I know it would be flooded there, So, and then probably down in Florida where I live now, we'll see what other dates come up. Yeah,
maybe an audiobook in the future.
Yeah, in the future, yeah. I guess I'll have to be the one on it because nobody else is going to be able to tell the story like I can.
No, you have to. When it's something like that, you've got to tell the stories because no one's
right,
like you.
Yeah.
Absolutely
not.
Yeah.
We're gonna look in the chat to see if we can find a question for you.
Okay.
Let's see. We'll go with Bent Tom here. Let me see if I can get Bent Tom is a good friend of the show. He's been on the show. He's been a host of the show. Let's see. So his question is, besides being a great musician, Steve, you also have a ferocious level of technical ability. What were your practice routines, or how did you go about it as a younger man when you were learning?
Well, what I did was I was taking lessons from Don Mock in Seattle, and this was while I was playing in different bands up there, and he was teaching me my theory, but then he went down to actually start teaching at a new school, which I found out, I called up at where he used to teach at in West Seattle, and they said, no, he's teaching a new guitar school down in LA. And I said, what? And they said, it's called the Guitar Institute of Technology. I actually got a hold, I got the number for the school, 462, and I also, I'm used to remember, 212-462-1384. But anyway, I remember it all those years later. And so I got a hold of him when I called down there, and he said, Steve, quit your band, sell your gear, and get your ass down here. 3 months later, I was there. And what really helped me tremendously was going to that school. I already had a pretty strict work ethic when it came to practicing and learning as much as I possibly could. But when I went down there, I really got into it. I mean, It was 7 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day of practicing, and I never let up, and so I developed some hand problems because of that back then, and
carpal tunnel and stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Carpal tunnel
that's
came on
terrible.
heavy. Yeah. Even back then, this was 1978, 79, so anyway, but what I did was I kept seeking different ways so that I could sound different from anybody else. I mean, when I went, this was all jazz guys. I'm the only guy in 1978 that had tight jeans, platform shoes and a leather coat and a solid body guitar. These guys were all jazz guys, so they looked at me like I was some kind of a freak. But you know what? We all got along great. And that's the thing is, as I was showing them some rock riffs and everything, and they were showing me some jazz riffs. So you learn as much from the students as you do from the teachers there, because they're from the students are from all over the world. And what I did was I just, I got into that whole two-handed technique early on back in 1975, actually. And I carried that on up until I went to school there. And that's when I saw, Emmett Chapman, the inventor of the Chapman stick that you play with both hands. And he did a clinic there. And then the way he explained how he did it on guitar and everything, he said, you have a pentatonic scale here, A minor pentatonic, and then you find another position up here and you just go, and I went, that's it. And so from that point on, I wrote down all of the arpeggios, the triads, all the interval skips, all the chord inversions, all the scales and everything. I wrote them down two-handed. I drew off these guitar graphs, that had circles, squares, and triangles on them to tell which hand was doing what. And I wrote it all out for the rest of the year. And by the time I was done, I had a stack of papers like that. And so, on all that technique. And so when I played at the graduation clinic or the graduation celebration, at the end of the year, I played a couple of songs where I did nothing but play two-handed, a couple of old jazz standards, just nothing but two-handed. And then Tommy Tedesco, who was the #1 studio guy in the 1950s, 1960s, and the 1970s, just an amazing guy. And Howard Roberts, who wrote the curriculum for the Guitar Institute, they came up to me afterwards and they said, you've got to write a book on that. And I said, I have enough for 3 books right now. Yeah. Easily 3 or 4 books actually. And so, And so they took me to their publisher, Dale Zdenek, the next day, and we signed a book deal right there on the spot. And just months later, I had my first book out. So called The Right Touch. And then later I wrote 2 more books called The Right Touch Books 2 and 3. And so anyway, but back to the question again is what I did was I really I didn't do anything but play guitar. All of my concentration was just on that. And like I just stated a minute ago, was that I wanted to do something different. If you're always learning what other people are already doing, then you're just a copy of them. You've got to find your own niche. And it's not necessarily playing fast or playing super, these super fast arpeggios or anything like that. You've got to think. You've got to play something. And this is the most important thing. Play a solo that fits the song perfectly. Okay? It's like every solo that I did, I never repeated myself. I always wrote a solo specifically for that song. Some of the licks sound kind of similar, but no, I never used the same thing ever. In fact, I prided myself on that. I've got to break away and I've got to compose a solo just for the song. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an ending, and that's the way I did it. And so I really concentrated on that. And that's probably why Turn Up the Radio ended up being solo of the year. It's not really difficult to play. Well, for some people it is, but what I did was I just started experimenting with it. I actually changed it into the key of A rather than G, because I wanted to modulate up a whole step while I was playing the solo to make it sound like it was going somewhere. And so then I started playing the A Mixolydian scale and da-da-da-da, going from the 4th to the major 3rd and then the root to the minor 7th and on up the Mixolydian, on up like that. And then I just changed it up a bit and went into the tapping part at the end. I used some interval jumps in there that I learned from Joe DiOrio. a teacher at the school who wrote the book Intervallic Designs, which is just amazing in itself. And so I really mixed it up. I spent 5 8-hour days just on that solo. But you see what it did? What it did was it broke new ground for me. This was our debut album, and I knew that this was going to be for the first single. So I thought, I got to come up with something that's really going to grab people, really something that really, really fits the song.
It's iconic, too.
Absolutely.
It is.
Thank you. Yeah.
That solo is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. That and Hammerhead too. Watching Hammerhead, I recently watched that that video where you talked about how you did it and everything. It's just amazing. Just the speed of your fingers, and
that was a bitch to play.
I bet the crispness of the notes too to play that. It's like, holy crap! Look at that.
Yeah, and I tripled that. When you hear that, that's 3 guitars.
Oh,
wow!
I tripled it. Yeah, that's not 1 guitar. That's 3.
That's crazy.
And that's why it's slightly out of time, slightly out of phase, and the tuning of it, because I played each one at a slightly different speed with the tape machine. The first one I did at normal speed, and then the second track that I laid of the same thing, I went off on another track and laid the same thing on it, which took several times because it's really difficult to get something like that, something that complex, timed in perfectly. And so that time I set the speed of the tape machine at, I think it was 0.99, so that when it went back up to regular speed, it was actually above pitch. And then I did the other one at 101. So when you brought the tape itself, we're talking about analog tape, back down to regular speed, it was below pitch. So I had one in pitch, one slightly above pitch, and one slightly below pitch. And that's why you hear these cross-fading things. There's no effects on that. That's just the way it sounded from me tripling
Pro Tools has nothing on you.
Wow.
Yeah, do it manually and good luck.
Oh, man, yeah.
Steve, let me ask you this. So going back to the beginning again, you and your bandmates, what was to be just a weekend jam session, but to all of a sudden have a handful of originals? What was the writing process like back then? How those originals happened?
What we did was we wrote together as a band, and then we wrote together separately. Sometimes I'd write with just Steve Plunkett, or Steve Plunkett would write with Kenny, or I'd write something with Randy. But what we do is we'd bring it together, and there was so many different ways that we actually wrote, different combos and everything like that. But the thing is when we brought the ideas down and we made it, a lot of times we made a demo out of it and finished up the song. But then we would throw away, basically 5 out of one, and keep 1 out of every 5 or 6 songs, and that would make it onto the album. But then sometimes we would, after we recorded the demo, we'd go, no, this one's not going to cut it. And so we had so many songs that never made it on. And this is really typical. You don't just write a song and put it on the album. You've got to write several songs just to get one that goes on the album. And then you've got basically, back then it was only 10 songs, but now you have 12, even 15 if you want. But that's the way we did it. We were very picky about which songs made it on and which songs didn't. So it's a writing process. One thing I really, when I had my music school up in Seattle, I would really stress, that you got to get into writing, because there's a million guitar players out there, excuse me, that can pretty much do anything. They can play super fast and all that. But how many of them can really write a song that's from the heart? I don't look at writing for commerciality. I look at it just write it and write it from what you feel, and that will appeal to the people because it's from the heart. And so when and that's what I grew up on too. As I grew up on, like Led Zeppelin 1 was just an amazing album, and Led Zeppelin 2, but they didn't write to have singles. Same thing with Dark Side of the Moon. It wasn't about putting out singles. It was about a tapestry of music that was just their concept of what they heard and what they wanted to create at that time. And these albums became absolutely huge. Dark Side of the Moon itself was on the charts for 14 years. I mean, come on. And that's because they didn't cater to what, the record companies wanted them to do. Just pump out one single after the next. And so what they did was they had a truthful concept. They put it out there, and it's a masterpiece. And so I really try to iterate that in my lessons, like really get into writing. And when you're playing, don't try to just think about the techniques and all that. That's good to know your techniques. It's good to know all your theory and everything. And it's good to get really proficient on the instrument. But really write a solo that is really perfect for that song in particular. Like I said, it's a little story right there in the middle of the song. And it's up to you to decide where to take them on that journey. So.
Awesome. I have a quick question for you, Steve. Actually, a couple things. Can you read music?
Yes, I can. Yeah. That was one of the things but I'm terrible at it.
But you, in your books, I assume that you created shapes for people to make it easier.
There was notation in the books, but there was also tablature. And the main thing that was that I wanted people to learn from was, one of the things that I did at the Guitar Institute was everything was given to me in notation. Not tablature, but notation, So I had to figure out what all the notes said, and so I started writing everything down in these guitar templates that I use, and so I wrote everything down on that. I transcribed everything from notation and tablature onto that. And so that way, see, I'm a visual player. I look at the guitar neck, and that's one of the main things is I have to have that guitar neck in front of me. And that's the way I look at everything. I look at all of the different scale shapes and everything, how they can go together, two-handed, and all the triads. And like I said before, all the chord inversions, and arpeggios and everything. That's my template, is that guitar neck. So I have to have that. And so what I did basically with their whole curriculum was I wrote it out on these guitar necks. And they said, "Can we use that?" And I said, "Hell yeah, you can use it." I wish I would have charged some money though, because I would be still making money off of that.
So you didn't like copyright or?
No, I did it for my own sake, so I remember things. That's why I remember things. And of course, I didn't want to make money.
No patents or anything.
Now everything's on tablature anyway.
Yeah, I know.
I have 12,000 pages of theory that I have.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in boxes. Yeah, in storage. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff.
We have a question from the chat, Lewis. What string gauge do you prefer?
Well, string gauge, 9 through 42. I've always used it. That's been I've tried to go heavier. Lighter didn't quite work, but now I'm thinking about going through, like an 8 through a 38 now because of my hands. I got to be very careful about the carpal tunnel thing. And, And so I'm thinking about going to a lighter gauge. The problem with my playing is I've always been a really aggressive player. I pick really hard, and when I was doing the hammers, I was like really. That's why when they said tapping, I said, "No, it's not tapping. It's hammering on, notes on," because I'm really slamming them. I press down really hard to get those notes out equally in volume as the notes that you would pick with your left hand. I wanted everything to be equal, so when I went from a pick and I went to my fingers on my right hand, it would be equally as loud. So I hammered the shit out of it, and so that's what. That's why I called it hammerhead too, because it wasn't. It's right. Tapping head. Tapping head doesn't quite cut it. You know what I mean?
It doesn't flow.
Yeah. Nah. But I paid the price for that aggressive approach to guitar, But it's the way that I felt when I played. I just really wanted to dig in hard, and so.
Right.
You did it justice.
Wow.
There is another question from Sandra, she's one of the originators of this show with Tony and Steve Rosen.
She's a founder. She's a founder.
So,
Hey,
Yeah.
say hi to Steve Rosen to me for me too, because
He's awesome.
Steve Rosen, I've known him for, probably 1978, 79.
Tony and him and Sandra started this show 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Steve was.
Steve, that's right. You mentioned that to me before. Yeah, Steve's great.
we love Steve. We
Yes.
Steve forever. He's fantastic, and he's been on a billion times since then. Sandra's question is: are you a Pantera fan, and do you have a favorite song by them? Because she's a huge Pantera fan.
Oh my God,
that's
her nickname.
Yes,
I love them. Oh God, what was the song?
No pressure.
No,
I can't remember the lyrics. It was the lyrics. It was one of their more popular ones. Oh my God, Dimebag Darrell. What a great
amazing guy,
man. The feel he had. Again, he was technically proficient, but it's just the feel. He was another one of those that was just a really aggressive player. It's slipping my mind right now. But there were a couple of songs that I really, really loved about with them. I'm just blanking out right now. But they're one of those bands. It's like I loved them. I loved Metallica when they came out, and especially with the Black Album. I love that album. And also
who didn't?
Yeah, right, exactly. And then oh God, who else? Get Down with the Sickness.
Disturbed, yeah.
Disturbed, yeah.
Yeah, Disturbed. Thank you.
Disturbed.
I'm just blanking out right now.
I've seen them live. They're great. I don't know if you've seen their cover
I've heard they were
Ozfest.
live. And I've seen some live footage of them, and they were just phenomenal.
But
they were awesome.
And another one that I saw that completely blew me away when I saw them was Rammstein.
Yeah. Tony loves Rammstein.
Oh, there you go.
Man. We always joke. Man. We have a little joke that joke that's Tony's favorite band. It is.
Tony, show him, Tony.
But
if you haven't, show him.
Somebody in the chat made that picture. With the Rammstein
somebody in the chat. It was me.
That's awesome.
That's what I mean. You were in the chat at the time, Ed.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
I saw them when I was living in Seattle.
Oh, that's funny.
And
they
were playing at the Paramount Theater, and my God, just like, these guys are great. And the keyboardist went out and a little raft out onto the audience and everything.
Oh, man, he's great.
And
was on like a treadmill.
I just thought, the pyrotechniques and just the
hardness. Oh my God!
And the drums, they had a mix so brilliantly in there.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you don't know what they're saying, but whatever. Yeah, it sounds great. Right. It sounds great.
Who cares? It sounds
You've been to all kinds of countries,
Yeah,
I think there's like two or three tractor trailers just for the pyro stuff.
Yes,
I'm sure. Yeah,
it's huge.
Fuel.
Steve mentioned a moment from that journey in that Winnebago to Jacksonville. From then until the 80s ended, and things had to have been going in fast forward.
Yeah, it was like I mentioned. Once we were in rehearsal, we made the demo tape, and then all of a sudden we're out on tour with Van Halen. We get signed to a record deal and everything. What happened from that point on? There was the success of the album. We went right back out on the road after. With Aerosmith and and of course Motley Crue, Ronnie James Dio, Bryan Adams, Heart. We did some shows with Whitesnake, and so we were just constantly out there, and then we would just only fly back into LA to basically record another album or to do a video, and then that was it. The rest of the time we were on the road, and it was like that for almost 6 years. And but there was just some wild times. I'll tell you. It was really weird playing with Bryan Adams, who is like who's got all the lovelorn women out there and everything, and their boyfriends are taking them. And then we went out with Ronnie James Dio, where it's all black T-shirt guys with the banging their heads. So it was a completely different audience, but we loved it, and we seemed to mix in with all these different ones. And then we go out with Heart, and that's like date night. You know what I mean? So we're going from one end of the spectrum to the other. You know?
All the while, your records are successful and people are knowing these songs, and on these tours, you have to look out in the audience and see that people know your songs and they're buying your records and they're your fans.
They're singing along with all the lyrics on them and everything. My girlfriend's boyfriend is in the Blondes and Black Blondes and Black Cars, and then of course Cloud 10, and then songs like Loud and Clear and everything, and you can see them singing along with it. I'm going, that's really cool. Now the one thing that we found out later is that all these other albums were doing much better internationally, abroad in different countries, and I didn't really know about this until, I started getting the royalty checks off of radio play and mechanical sales, and seeing that it's from all these different countries, and so that kind of caught me off guard. And then when I went and I started doing clinics, after Autograph basically split, which was December of 1989, the very end of the 80s, that was it. And I started doing these clinics, and I was surprised because all these clinics were completely full to capacity, and everybody had our albums, all 3 albums, and I was signing them left and right. And I was thinking when I went over there, I was thinking, nobody's going to know who I am, come to find out. It's like, wow, all these people know our songs and they know who I am, they know my books and everything. And so it was really nice to see that, I was humbled. So.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice.
But one story from the Motley Crue tour that I have to share with you.
Oh boy!
We were in
is it
Providence,
PG?
Rhode Island again. Okay, and what happened was this girl got on the bus, and we thought she was dressed in just crazy. She had all these layers of clothes on and everything, and she had multiple colored hair, and she stunk really bad. But we thought that, okay, this must be somebody that is here to do an interview. And so, the bus driver didn't think anything of it, and our road manager didn't think anything of it. We just thought, okay, well, because she started asking us questions and stuff, and we were answering her, and then the bus started to go down the road, and we were going, God, who is this woman anyway? And so, anyway, the bus driver, we were on the freeway now, and it's snowing out, really heavily. And he was just getting on the freeway, and he turned around and he goes, what the hell is that smell? And we all just pointed at her. Because no. And he pulled over the tour bus on the side of the freeway. And he said, get the F off of my bus now. And so she got out. I mean, she looked like a homeless person because she was all dressed in all these rags and everything. We felt bad for her. And then she's on the side of the freeway as we're driving away. And she goes, F you, Aerosmith. We all just because she thought she was on Aerosmith's tour bus. That's how messed up she was, And so we told Aerosmith about it the next day, and they just all cracked up. And they said, glad she was on your bus.
Thank you, Autograph.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Priceless.
Oh my God. There's so many stories. You know what, Steve, I didn't have them in the house, but I was going to put together a couple of red Solo cups and ask you if you wanted to play a little football, but.
Yeah. That was another thing. That was when we went the next day and filmed American Bandstand.
Right.
We did a live album in San Antonio on Cape Basic Flower Hour back then. Remember that? That was back in
God.
It's been around since the 70s.
I remember that.
And so anyway, we did an album with them, a live album with them in San Antonio. And then we had to fly to go film the American Bandstand. Well, San Antonio, Texas had a freak snowstorm and the airport was closed and we were supposed to fly out that night. Yeah, San Antonio, Texas. This would be 1985. You can look it up, and see.
Crazy.
Big snowstorm. So they closed down the airport, and we maneuvered they had barricades up, but we maneuvered our way around them and got into the airport. And there was just like nobody there. This is before, big time security or anything. We just walked in with all of our stuff, except for, with our equipment, and so anyway, we were going to fly in, but then everything was closed. So we decided, oh God, there's no food. Nothing was there. Nothing was open. So there's just nowhere to get a drink anywhere or anything. So our tour manager, Chris DeFrancisco, decided to put together 2 solo cups and duct tape them in the middle. Of course, duct tape comes to play everywhere, of course,
Obviously.
And so anyway, so he duct taped these together and he said, let's play, some football in the airport here. So we did. And then he whips out this half-gallon of vodka and we
nice.
Hail King Chris. It's like just like
thank you. Thank you, football and vodka.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
We stayed up all night, flew to LA and did American Bandstand, flew out at 2:30 in the afternoon to Detroit, played in Detroit, partied with Bob Seger, and then get on the tour bus, and then we travel on the tour bus to Cleveland, Ohio, and Steve Plunkett blurts out, "Hello, Cincinnati!"
Wow!
This is just
what a run!
This is just like one day after the next. This is the way it was, And so
when
people hear these stories, they go, "My God, it's just a circus that never ends. It's just always,
It was. Hey, how long after the American Bandstand date did it air?
What's that? Did they
how
give it
long
air?
after
oh, God,
did it air?
It was almost immediate. I think it was like a week later, a week or 2 later. And that was it. And it was so cool to look in TV Guide. Remember TV Guide?
Yeah.
And to see, Dick Clark and the guests on their, autograph and going, wow.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd see that, But
the TV
all
Guide,
these things,
Mom, I made it.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
that is on YouTube. I've seen that there. You guys are awesome in it.
Yeah. Thank you.
My.
Yeah, Steve or Dick kind of catches each one of you after you play. He asked each one of you questions, and I don't know if you had knowledge of it ahead of time or not, but
no, we didn't. No, he doesn't prep everybody for the questions. He expects you to just be honest about whatever questions he asks you.
He asked all of you guys questions.
Yeah. And so, he asked me, I think, was it pretty scary? And or did they like you? And I said, yeah, they actually did like us, surprisingly enough, it was like one of those things where, who knew, but when you go out on tour and nobody even knows who you are, like with the Van Halen tour, and they don't even announce that there's an opening band, but then once they heard us play, they went, wow, these guys are really good, So,
I thought you were awesome.
Yeah, thank you for that.
The 17-year-old me thought you were awesome. I still think you're awesome, obviously.
Yeah. We saw you here, Steve, on the 84 tour a few times.
Oh, okay.
Greensboro, Charlotte. Yeah. We were rabid little Van Halen nuts.
Yeah. Well, look at my background. Come on.
Yeah. Well, they were. They were the #1 band in the world, though. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They were.
Yeah, it was great touring with them. It was such a.
Oh my God!
What David Lee Roth said, it's like a homecoming. It's like full circle because they used to open up for Steve Plunkett and Randy Rand and Wolfgang.
That's crazy.
And here it is.
Opposite.
We're opening up for them. So it's kind of
awesome.
Full circle.
Yeah.
So there is.
Do we have any? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we got a question in the chat. Have you ever had, or do you have a signature guitar out?
Yes, I did have one, and it is that's not in manufacture now. The last one that I had that I used mostly throughout my whole career was the Jackson that I had. It was actually Chardell and then Jackson and Wayne Sharp, Grover Jackson and Wayne Sharpell split. And so I stayed with Grover Jackson because Wayne Sharpell was moving to Texas and I wanted to stay with Grover. And so I did that. And that was a Jackson guitar, the black one with the yellow grap on it. And that is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
it's still there?
Yeah.
Next to Michael Anthony's bass, the Jack Daniels bass? In that case?
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
It's still there?
That's right, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think it was last July was when that happened.
Cool.
Sure it was July, yeah.
Cool.
So.
I didn't know if that was on loan or if it's there forever.
Oh no, it's there forever. I donated.
Oh,
it,
fantastic!
And Randy's bass. Randy's bass, Nuns in a Blender. He called.
Yep.
It.
Yeah, that is odd.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So they're there for good, and plus a few other autograph memorabilia things. But there wasn't much more to give them because, unfortunately, Kenny Richards and Steve Isham. Steve Isham passed away in 2008, and then the keyboard player, and then the drummer Kenny passed away in 2017. So they weren't able to donate anything. So I just gave him a guitar, and then Randy at that point had also passed away, and so I gave him Regina, his widow, and a great friend of ours, great friend of ours. Donated his Nuns in a Blender bass, probably his most, the one that he was known for most.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Steve, I want to say this. I am a huge autograph fan and have been since 1984. Thank you for the music, sir.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very welcome. It's been my pleasure. I mean, it's just it's always been a real gift for me to have to be able to make music that's on the radio and play shows where people know our lyrics and when they're in the audience mimicking my guitar solos, even though they're playing them wrong, I still love it.
Right.
It's
right.
It's just a real pleasure to have that opportunity in life, and I feel really blessed that I've had these experiences and continue to have them. So
it seems like you're still having fun doing it, and it shows.
Absolutely,
the passion,
right?
The passion is there. If you can do that for so long, it's not really work. It's just love of what you do.
It isn't work. It's like one of those things where you just enjoy doing it. So
absolutely,
it's very arduous at times. I mean, especially when you're doing touring, and then you're writing music on the tour bus because you have to go in and record the second or third album. It's and then also writing songs for movies and television series and stuff like that while you're out on tour. It's just difficult to do. People don't realize how demanding the life really is. And then there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees at all that your next album is going to be successful or anything like that. It's always
absolutely.
It's always you're kind of running off the skin of your teeth, and wishing for all the best. So
So I'm sorry. What?
Oh, speaking of tour buses, whatever you think happened to Bat and Wingnut?
I don't think they're alive. I mean, they were barely holding on back then. They were from the upper Midwest, and they were, I can say it now, but they were heavy duty methamphetamine addicts,
Oh, okay.
And we're riding on the tour bus with them, but
well, you said they looked like it, but you never know. You never know.
Yeah, right, exactly. You don't know really. So
okay.
Steve, I was going to ask you, have you heard from Steve since you put the book out? Steve Plunkett? Oh
yeah. He wrote a blurb for it, and he read the book, and I sent him the PDF like I did you guys, and he read it, and he absolutely loved it. It reminded him of all the stories and everything. So he wrote a blurb for it, about this is Lynch telling about all the stories and everything, and so I'm going to publicize that. I also received blurbs from John Shanks, who is currently playing for. I was his guitar teacher when he was 12. Okay,
Really?
so yeah, and so he's a Grammy-winning producer, producer of the year Grammy. I mean, he won that. That's like heavy duty.
Damn.
And he's been nominated for
Big
6
stuff.
more Grammys. He's produced Barbra Streisand and Van Halen and all these country artists and everything. He's just amazing, and he's a great guitar player, and he gives me full credit. He wrote this whole big thing about, when I asked him to write a blurb about me, and he went off, and I was surprised at just how much I had really influenced him in those younger years, because I was going to the Guitar Institute of Technology at the time, so I was really kind of stringent on the way that on my practice routine and everything. And so he really got into that, and he really appreciated it. And so he talks about that. And then I have also, so I have Steve Plunkett, I have John Shanks, and then I have Leslie Rule, whose mother was Anne Rule, who wrote the whole thing about Ted Bundy and all that. And so, yeah, all the books about Ted Bundy and all that. And so
that was crazy.
Leslie, you see, and that's the thing in the book I
read
about
that.
this was that when I was at a Rolling Stones concert in '72, Leslie was there too, because we knew each other from junior high, and her mom was Anne Rule, who became this world famous author. But anyway, what happened was that Leslie, I said, Leslie, you need to ride back to, the south end of Seattle where I lived at. She said, no, my mom's coming to pick us up. She works at the suicide hotline up on Queen Anne Hill, which is right downtown Seattle. And I said, okay, no problem. And then she told me a few years ago that night she met Ted Bundy. He worked beside her mother at the suicide hotline center in Seattle.
God. Wow.
Yeah. See, I'm telling you, these bizarre stories.
I know.
It's like one degree of separation, and it's like one after the next. And so she told me about that, and I said, "Oh my God, Leslie, are you kidding?" And she goes, "No, this is reality. I went and met after I saw you after that Rolling Stones concert in '72. I went and met Ted Bundy, and something just creepy about him.
Wow.
And then the next thing you know, everything comes.
That's why I said
Yeah.
9 lives of a rock guitar.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Once again, there is your cover, Steve Lynch, Confessions of a Rock Guitarist, just out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it comes out May 20th. It's actual
pre-order
official release date.
Awesome.
Yeah, but pre-order right now. You'll get it right then.
Yeah. We'll have those links posted by shows and Steve here in the show built in. Yeah.
Fantastic.
That was a fantastic read.
Oh my God!
I kind of put on the brakes early so I could end my work week by reading the last little bit, and it's
right on.
awesome. Yeah, so absolutely, thank you for the book, and thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. We had some really good conversations tonight. I'm glad we covered some things that I haven't talked about at all in other interviews, and so that was a real pleasure for me as well.
Yeah, we are real autograph fans here. I've been a huge autograph fan since I was 18.
Me too.
We listened to your catalog constantly. Me,
Very cool. Very cool.
I prefer Loud and Clear as my favorite autograph album. Just saying.
There you go.
So it's mine too. We were at the top of our game right there, and Andy Johns, who recorded our original demo, he ended up producing that one, and so we, instead of doing 30 days in the studio and recording, mixing, and mastering like we did for the first 2 albums, we spent 3 months in the studio with him. So we really got to have time to listen back to the tracks and do some changes and stuff, and really have more time to perfect it to our liking.
With you being that sound at that time in that era, with it being such a great rock sound, you did incorporate keyboards. Isham played a key role in the landscape of what was going on in my ears at the time. A lot of bands were using tastefully keyboards in heavier rock music like that.
Yeah, and you know what? I preferred the keyboards in there because, in fact, if in the future when I put together another project, keyboards would have to be in there because it adds such another layer, another dimension of sound. And, it's great to just have, like the AC/DC 4 on the floor, boom, boom, all heavy guitars all the way through and everything. I love that too. But I've always been, like, my favorite album's always been Dark Side of the Moon. So I like the keyboards in there for the different flavors that it actually offers in there. So
Right. Yeah. That's something we loved about Autograph.
I think a lot of people did too, because when we played later without keyboards, a lot of people said, "Man, where's the keyboards? We really miss it," So
right.
Absolutely.
Brendan, Ed, have you guys got anything else?
I got a couple more questions.
Okay.
I don't want to keep you all night, but you played night golf with Motley Crue. Our host here, Tony, is a big golfer.
Oh, okay.
I just want to know how did that go?
Well, what happened was at the end of the Motley Crue tour, we were all flying back on the same plane. So that was a complete party. I mean, it was a commercial flight, but everybody on the plane was doing shots with us and everything.
No way.
Nice.
Oh yeah, the whole plane, even the flight attendants.
Not the pilots. Oh, okay.
Not the pilots. No, they were locked away safely. But
all right, good.
But then they were saying we're going to go to midnight golfing. Where it's all lit up, and you played with It was out in the valley, out in the San Fernando Valley, and they said we're going to be out there at midnight. You guys got to join us. But they did this at the end of the tour. I guess they did it a few times, and so they asked us to come out and join them on this. And we said, yeah, hell yeah, the party's not over. Let's keep going. And so we went out there and golfed with them, and they had fluorescent balls, right? So you hit them, and it was different colored balls, so everybody knew which ball was theirs. And they had these golf carts with scantily clad women and free drinks going the whole time.
No way.
Yeah.
Gee, that must have been twist my arm for that one.
It was
nice. Let's all go.
It was over the top decadence. You know what I mean? It was so cool. And that's just the
glow ball golf and naked cart girls, right?
Yeah. That's another chapter.
All right.
That's funny. You have another question, Ed?
Fantastic. Yeah, I do actually. So the send her to me video that looked like a lot of fun, dude. I mean, how were the MTV videos when you had to do them? I mean, I know you got Papermate to pay for that shit, but
yeah, for the first one. And Papermate, they wanted to throw in a little commercial in there with, us, when we're signing in, it shows the pen, Papermate,
Yeah.
And then MTV saw it and they said, no way, we don't do any advertising, in the videos and all that. But the video was done, so we talked them into it and they went along with it. And
cool.
Then we were also getting hell from Coca-Cola because we said things go better with rock. And they said, no, that's ours. You can't use that. And we said, yeah, we can. And we fought them and we won. So that was
good for you, dude.
Yeah, we won. So.
Wow.
Nice.
Go ahead.
What was your question about the video itself, though?
I just saw that it looked like you had a lot of fun.
Oh, God, yeah. It was a lot of takes.
Were they fun?
Yeah, they were fun. It was like the first one, like we did Turn Up the Radio, that was 2 60-hour days back to back. So we were a bit burned out after that one. But, it's... the
guy with the cigar and all that.
Yeah.
And the girls coming out of... You each had a girl and...
Yeah, that was on Sender to Me. Yeah. And so that was a great one, yeah. And then Blondes and Black Cars, that was a really fun one. And they were all great, you know. It was, and then
that's awesome.
For like She Never Looked That Good for Me, that was in the Dudley Moore, Kirk Cameron movie, Like Father, Like Son.
Amazing.
That was a huge movie, and we played that live. And
you were
really?
We played that live, and then
movie.
they kept on saying, okay, let's do another take when audio wasn't quite right and all that. And so he said, this is just a rehearsal. Okay. So we just played through the song. I was spitting water on Kenny. He was throwing drumsticks at me and everything. And then, what they did was at the end of it, we thought we were just messing around, you know? And so at the end of it, they said, okay, cut, that's a take. And we went, what? No, that's not a take. You know, he was just goofing around, and he said, oldest trick in the book, you tell them it's a rehearsal, and you get the best performance.
Oh,
it's true.
Right.
When we watched it back, they played it on the monitor, and when we watched it back, we went,
because you were natural.
That's perfect, because we were relaxed. We didn't care, you know what I mean? So
awesome.
So they do this with actors all the time. They say, okay, it's just a rehearsal. And they give their best performance because they're relaxed, you know.
Tricky.
They think the cameras aren't rolling, you know, so, yeah.
I got one more question for you, Steve, if you don't mind. So you believe in reincarnation?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I've had stuff that happened to me too, the same as you, and I believe in it as well. And you witnessed the Shasta light thing.
Yes.
Shasta Mountain.
That was something.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm all into the paranormal, so
it's one of those things where it happens and you watch it right in front of you, and then all of a sudden you don't have doubts about these things anymore. You know,
incredible.
And it was so phenomenal because, you know, we were up at 9,000 feet because, you know, during August, which is when this was, Mount Shasta's in Northern California, so all the snow was melted off the mountain. It was just a big dirt mound, basically. But we drove up to the highest point you can drive to, which is 9,000 foot elevation, and so we were up there just you know, having some wine and everything, and just having some dinner. And it was late. You know, we got up there pretty late. But then around midnight, you know, I was sitting facing the mountain, and my friends were sitting on the other side of the picnic bench, and this big flash that lit up the whole mountain, and they could see the reflection of it on my face, and they said, "What the hell is that?" And they turned around. I don't know. The whole mountain just lit up. And so anyway, we just kind of blew it off, and that we could hear other people talking about it in the campground there. But then it happened again about 10 minutes later, and this time it was a greenish hue to it, and it lit up the whole mountain again. Huh. And at that point, I saw these two little lights coming down the mountain, and when it got down near the parking lot, I could see what it was. It was some guy that had a lantern on his helmet, and then another one he was carrying down the trail. And so when he got down to the level of the parking lot, he was throwing all his camping gear into the back of his truck. And I said, "What was that?" And he goes, I don't know. I don't want to know. And then right at that time, another one went off and was with a bluish hue. So they were happening like in 10-minute intervals. And then there was a pinkish one and everything, and a yellow one. And so nobody knew. At this point, all the other campers were leaving. They didn't know what to think about it because it was very, very bright. Now,
they all got scared.
Up there, you can see the whole of the Milky Way galaxy just streaming across the sky because there's nothing to block us view. There's no lights up there or anything, and you're up at 9,000 feet. And so, you know, we stayed up there for a while longer, and they eventually stopped. And then we went back down to the hotel we were staying in. Next morning, we went to the Big Bear Cafe, and everybody was talking about it. It was front page news on all these different newspapers and everything. You know, the Shasta Lights, they called them. And we were there that night. We just happened to be there that night. And so, you know, it's like
you
all
witnessed
these stories, you know, and so it's just, you know, like I said, being at the right place at the right time, and just the way mysterious circumstances like that kind of follow me around. And
what is up
like
with you, dude?
Yeah, I know. Like,
wow. Wow, have you seen Bigfoot too?
No.
Okay, just asking.
Yeah.
Throw that out there. I
Yeah.
had one.
Wow.
I had one last question. So, you know, doing music as long as you have and playing with all these different bands, is there some bands that you or artists that you want to go see now, and do you have plans?
Yeah,
to see any?
I would go see probably. I love Porcupine Tree. They're a real cutting edge band that's out of the UK. I've seen them several times. I want to go see them again because it's really progressive music and really superb players in that. I'd go see probably Conjure One, Sigur Rós. I would go see, and these are all bands that aren't really popular in the US, but a lot of them are huge worldwide. And it's more the world music rather than catering to American radio. You know what I mean? And I have a tendency to like that stuff. And of course, I would love to see Pink Floyd. I was lucky enough where I got to see Led Zeppelin twice, and I got to see Jimi Hendrix twice. And and I saw the Doors twice, and so Jethro Tull, all these bands.
Right.
I'm from the 60s. I'm a 60s and 70s guy.
I wish.
So I got to see these huge bands. I saw the Rolling Stones twice. When in the early days.
In their prime.
The late 60s and early 70s. So
Right.
in 72, like what I was talking about when I told you I met. Leslie Rule, the daughter of Anne Rule, the author, and that was 1972. So I saw him in the fairly early days. So it was just great seeing all these incredible bands back then. It shaped my life too, into what I became.
I mean, I feel that way now. There's so much great music out there, and it's great that we can live in that time. It's just a great
absolutely,
time,
absolutely.
Awesome.
Got it.
Awesome.
And it'll continue on. Keep the artificial intelligence out of there because music's got to come from the heart.
Oh,
Yeah.
It can't be digitally processed. It's not going to work. It never will.
They can try all they want, but it's not going to be the same. And
nope,
absolutely not.
I don't think you have to worry because you have those tape machine skills.
That's right. Turn up the tape machine.
That's it. that is correct.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, for a guy who got busted for stealing cheese, you did pretty good.
That's right.
Right?
That's good. I had enough for the Wonder Bread, and I had enough for the bologna, but I didn't have enough for cheese. So I sold the cheese, and I got busted. Everything I ever did, I got caught for.
What the hell?
My life of crime was just nil. I just couldn't do anything without getting caught.
You learned some good skills.
Yeah, thank God you had skills to build a deck for the VFW
for the
police station.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Probably still there.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for you,
it's still
brother.
there.
I think it's still standing. Absolutely.
Well, there you go.
It's the
Great
Steve
craftsmanship.
Lynch Memorial,
Good for you.
Steve Lynch Memorial Porch.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Steve, I guess we're going to wind things down here at this point. This has been so much fun.
Absolutely.
Everybody in the chat, thank you guys so much for hanging out here tonight.
For tuning in and being part of the whole thing, And I appreciate you for hosting me on this great show, and it's been my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right. Hey, cheers, you guys. Peace out.
Cheers. We need to have you again.
Steve Lynch, Confessions of a Rock Guitarist. We'll have links at show's end. Go out and 20th. Get it now.
Absolutely. It is pre-order hilarious.
You guys will
and informative, and I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
We love it. We love it.
Yes, sir.
We will be right back here again next Saturday night with episode 251. Show me your pick. We are approaching 5 years here on the channel. Me, Steve Rose,
congratulations,
and Sandra
you guys.
Started this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
We've had so many great guests, Billy Sheehan and
very cool.
Brian Young, and oh my God, we've Tony, we've had and you as well, obviously. Charlie Farron, and
this was
none as great as the great Steve Lynch.
This was
Thank you so much, Steve.
All right,
it's been awesome, dude.
All
right, Steve, B, Ed, we're gonna cruise on out of here. everybody. Leave a thumbs up. Hope to see you right back here next week. Thanks for being here.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Peace out. See ya.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. All right. You guys got it. All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye
Steve.
now. Okay.
Bye.
Alrighty. Best show ever.
That was awesome.